Perfect. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. This is our presentation from the Behavior Alliance about the month of the military child and specifically resources to support military connected students. We'll talk a little more about that as we get into it. I'm Dr. Georgia McCown. I'm a program manager with the Behavior Alliance, and I'm really excited to talk to you today. All right, so first I want to tell you a little bit about the Behavior Alliance as a starting point. So the Behavior Alliance is a technical assistance center that supports school districts across the state. And our goal is to be the go-to behavior systems resource for South Carolina school districts. You'll see on this slide that we've got lots of free asynchronous learning materials. We have a monthly newsletter, and we share a lot of things on social media. So if you're curious about what's going on with the Behavior Alliance, please scan this QR code and you can get some more information. All right. Just to acknowledge our funder, we're funded by the South Carolina Department of Education's Office of Special Ed Services. We're a participant in SC Teams, which is a group of technical assistance providers across the state. You might be familiar with some of them. They're our partners too. And then our mission and vision is really to make sure that school districts are using evidence-based practices so that all students can experience a sense of belonging and engage successfully at school. We do this by partnering with school districts and being their go-to behavior systems resource. You can learn more about our work by looking at our social media pages at BASC Behavior. We encourage schools and districts to set up behavior matrices with norms and skills for their everyday activities. So we do the same thing in our sessions. Our norms are participating, being respectful, and being responsible. We always highlight two key skills when we talk about these. One is to press pause as necessary. You might ask a question today that I don't have the answer to or that isn't really within the scope of our session, and I might ask you to press pause and I'll follow up with you about that later on. We also encourage people to know when to step up and step back. We want to hear from everyone that's on this session today. So just know that about yourself. If you're typically a person who participates a little more, maybe take stock of that as you're sharing in order to encourage other people to share too. All right, let's talk about what we're going to do in our session here today. So our session learning objectives is that after attending this session, you'll be able to do two things. One is describe the demographics of South Carolina's military connected students. So I'll share some data with you about those students across the state. And the second is to be able to identify and utilize resources to employ in your professional practice to support military connected students. All right, so I'll give you a little bit of an introduction. We're almost done with that, and then we'll get into the background on military connected students. I'll have you split into groups to do a scavenger hunt activity to explore those resources together, and I'll move around to ask questions during that time, and then we'll debrief and you'll complete a session evaluation. So that's what our session will look like today. I do want to give you a little bit of information about me. So I'm Dr. Georgia McCown. I'm the program manager for effective data systems and professional learning at the Behavior Alliance. I have a background in learning sciences and instructional design, so that's how I come to this work. And I've spent more than a decade supporting and researching supports for military connected students. I was a classroom teacher in a military housing community, and so I learned a lot about what was going on with my military connected students, and that sent me on this journey. I just got back from Washington, D.C. last night, meeting with a collaborative of other folks who research and support military connected students. And so I've got some hot off the press stuff to share with you as we move through this presentation today. All right, we're going to start with a game. You don't have to do much for this game, but you will have to be able to find the React button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So I want to give you a second to look for that. It's down at the bottom. A lot of these are going to be like voting activities, so you'll have to vote with the reaction that you see on the screen for what you think the correct answer is. So go ahead and take a look down at your Zoom screen, find that React button. You might have to find the up arrow next to it so that you can see the different shapes that I'm going to ask you to show me. All right, so how many military installations do you think there are in the US? If you think it's fewer than 400, you're going to do the thumbs up reaction. And if you think it's greater than 400, you're going to give me the surprised face reaction. So go ahead and show me your reactions. How many military installations do you think there are in the United States? All right, we see a mixed bag, but it looks like most folks are thinking more than 400. Let's see. So there's between 450 and 500 installations, depending on who's counting and who's opening and closing districts at any given point. They're in nearly every state, and this includes active duty installations, like the one closest to where I'm from is Naval Station Norfolk. That's a really, really big one. But there's also lots of Reserve and National Guard training centers and recruiting centers and facilities around the country. There are another 750 installations around the world, and they are in more than 80 countries. So the United States Armed Forces has installations all over the place. So sometimes folks think that they don't have any military connected students in their community, and I would bet that you probably do. All right. How many school-age military-connected children do you think there are in the United States? Do you think it's fewer than a million or greater than a million? If you think it's fewer, you're going to give a thumbs up. If you think it's greater, you're going to give the surprise face. All right, most of you are correct. It's 1.4 million school-age children. This can be a really hard number to count. So in this metric right here, it's just active duty National Guard and Reserve connected children. We'll talk a little later. Veteran children are really hard to count. So there are a lot of them, but we don't have quite as much influence on how they get counted. How many states have a Purple Star Schools program? Purple Star Schools is a program that acknowledges and celebrates military connected students. They have to have a couple of components. They have to have a student transition program. They have to have professional development for their students and staff. They have to have a web page for military connected students, and they have to have a designated staff liaison for military connected students. So do you think fewer than 20 states have a Purple Star Schools program, or do you think greater than 20 states have a Purple Star Schools program? Ah, I love to stump you. There's 44 states with a Purple Star Schools program. This has moved through the legislature in all 44 of these states, which is really, really exciting. And there are six more states currently with pending Purple Star Schools legislation. That would be Alabama, Arkansas, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, and New York are currently having that move through their legislative process. So when I first started this work, Purple Star Schools did not exist. Just a few years ago, I would say about 20 states had Purple Star Schools programs, and now we're up to 44 states with six more on the way. So let's get into the background about military connected students. Thanks for playing the game. I always appreciate seeing kind of where we're at in the room. So let's talk about South Carolina service members specifically. There are over 50,000 service members currently living in South Carolina, which is a lot. And they are mostly active duty members, as you can see from this chart. I'll show you where you can pull these charts for your county a little bit later. But you'll see that there's a large active duty presence in South Carolina, more than 35,000. And then we also have Reserve and National Guard service members in the state as well. These counts do not include veterans. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but this is currently serving military connected folks. And on average, military connected families have children. Similar to the national average, most military families have two children. Or a little more than two. And so this represents a large group of students and children in the state as well. Veterans, again, can be harder to track because they no longer have to report to surveys or demographic findings once they become retired or veteran status. So they're a little bit harder to track. But from what we know here, there are over 300,000 South Carolina veterans between the ages of 18 and 54. And that's primarily the age range where people have school-age children. So this is of consequence to us as educators and folks working in schools because if there are 300,000 veterans between 18 and 54, that probably represents a large subset of our student population. Let's talk about South Carolina's dependents. A dependent in the military is someone who gets benefits via their service member, right? So it could be a spouse, it could be a child. In certain cases, it can be other folks as well, but largely it's spouses and children. There are more than 50,000 dependent active, 50,000 dependents in South Carolina right now, and more than 32,000 of them are military connected children. So again, this does not include veteran status children. This is just active duty children. So more than 32,000 students in our schools across the states have a parent who is actively serving. So what makes military connected students unique? What is different about them? If you've worked in a school with a large population of military connected students, you probably know some of these things, but maybe you don't. So Remember that the military service members are parents to more than 1.4 million children across the United States and about 32,000 children here in South Carolina. Military connected students experience a lot of transitions. So there are the obvious transitions, like when they are moving. The average military connected student moves 6 to 9 times in their K-12 career. So it's a lot of starting over. They also, unlike the general population, move across state lines very often, which means they're having to navigate different statewide school policies and district-wide school policies really often. They're also experiencing a lot of transitions related to military readiness. So their parents are leaving for training exercises very often. Currently, a lot of military families are experiencing what's called a rapid deployment, which means you have very little notice that your parent is leaving, and typically for an unknown stretch of time or to an unknown location. So there's a lot of disturbances within the family that puts them in a state of transition very often. Additionally, it's been found in research that schools and communities do not know a lot about military connected students, and that lack of knowledge often leads to gaps in services and supports. So, professional development, like a session like this one, can be really, really helpful as a starting point to bridge that gap between the provider knowledge, being teachers and school staff, and the family knowledge and what they need. All right, now I'm going to walk you through some of the resources that I have to share with you. You'll get a handout of these later, so please don't feel like you need to scribble them all down. So when it comes to identifying military connected students, we've got a couple specific resources. One of them is a self-paced module that has been created by the Behavior Alliance to help you. It includes some state specifics, so some of that data I shared before, and then some state-specific resources from the South Carolina Department of Ed to make sure that you can support military connected students in your district. Those graphs that I shared with you earlier about the population across the state, those are available by county from a tool called Measuring Communities. It's really, really helpful if you're trying to make an argument for funding or support for specific folks in your community because they have county by county snapshots that can really help you zero in on who's living where you're living. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation has generated a lot of resources around an initiative called Hidden Helpers. And Hidden Helpers are children who live in caregiving families, meaning they have a wounded, ill, or injured veteran living in their home. They're often difficult to notice because a lot of these injuries are not visible. So they have a lot of resources to support children in those caregiving homes, which can be helpful as you're thinking about the population that you serve. And then PsychArmor has a wealth of resources around military and veteran communities, but more specifically for this audience, they have a course for educators in supporting hidden helpers. So if you come to find that you believe that there are hidden helpers, children in caregiving homes in your school population, you can support them by getting educated about the background on hidden helpers and support services available. We also have resources available for celebrating military connected students. So the Military Child Education Coalition has a toolkit for the month of the military child. The month of the military child is April. I realize that we only have a week left, but there's a lot of just print and go resources that you could use to help celebrate that even with minimal planning. The South Carolina Department of Ed also has an entire webpage devoted to military connected students and how to support them. It's linked in the flyer that I'll share with you shortly, but it has details about Purple Star schools, it has details about the military student identifier, and other statewide things that are going on that you can leverage to help support students in your schools. Additionally, I want to share some resources specific to certain student populations. So Sesame Street for Military Families has a wealth of resources that can help you with military-related family issues for little children. So they have a lot of really good resources around deployments, homecomings, relocations, and other tools for talking to children about those. A really, really helpful feature of that is their entire website is available in English and in Spanish. So if you have, there are a lot of Spanish-speaking military families, and so if you need resources to support them, this is a really helpful place to start. They have videos, they have games, they have little print and go booklets that you can use with young children to support them. If you're looking for resources specifically to military connected teens, I'd like to point you toward Bloom and the National Military Family Association. Bloom is actually a grassroots military teen nonprofit or a group that started specifically to share the experiences of military connected teens, and they've partnered with the National Military Family Association to have broader reach and support. They have the field guide to the military teen, and this could be really, really helpful for your educators working in secondary schools. to help them understand the experiences of military adolescents and how that might be different from military adults and smaller or younger military children. This was produced in collaboration with military connected teens. So everything that has been, this wasn't just adults studying them, this was teens really sharing their experiences. We have some deployment related resources that are very timely as we're engaged in an active conflict. So the National Child Traumatic Stress Network produced a report called For Military Parents and Caregivers Supporting Your Child Throughout Deployment. This is really, really helpful because a lot of military connected students right now don't remember the last time we had a wartime deployment cycle. And so these children need more support than we are used to because they haven't done this. The military hasn't done this in a while. And so it's an opportunity to kind of brush up on resources and opportunities to support your students. These have deployment-specific resources for the adults supporting military-connected children. So this is not a resource for children. This is a resource for adults to make sure that you know everything you need to know before you start supporting students in that capacity. The Department of Defense Education Activity, Office of Safety and Security also has deployment support resources specifically for educators. So this was really helpful when it first came out as an opportunity to get educators on the same page about terms you might hear, responses you might see from students, and really grasping what we know in the research about how deployments affect behavior, how deployments affect relationships and academic performance, and some of those other pieces. I've listed some other resources here. The military connected student space is rich with resources. There are tons of organizations that put out a lot of things. So I wanted to mention some here. In no way is this all encompassing of military connected resources or supports, but these are the ones that I thought might be the most helpful to you in this moment as you're supporting students. If you have a specific need, you're always welcome to reach out to me and I can connect you with additional resources. I want to talk to you about military school liaisons. These are folks who are employed by the Department of War or the Department of Defense, specifically to liaise between families and schools and school districts. So if you live near an installation, especially, there is a military school liaison who can help you as you support students and can help families also get connected in your school. The Department of Defense also has the Military Family Life Counselor Program. These are non-medical counselors who can support students and families as they experience military transitions. In some places, they are located within schools, but in most places, they're located on the installation itself. I have a link where you can search and find the closest one to you. Partners in Promise is a nonprofit that specifically supports military-connected students with special education needs. So if you see families with special ed needs transitioning in and out of your schools, this could be a helpful resource to share with them. The Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission, also commonly known as MIC3, is a really helpful place to start to understand what types of agreements exist between states. As I mentioned before, military-connected students are often moving across state lines, so they're navigating different policies and processes as they move. This can be a helpful starting point if you've got folks transitioning in and out. And then the Clearinghouse for Military Family Readiness has a lot of self-paced resources for teachers and parents, specific to parenting, but then also specific to military lifestyle demands. So if you need resources there, there are plenty that can help you just in time. If you're noticing a specific issue within your building, you can start there and get just-in-time support. I'm going to drop in the chat the resource handout for you. It's also available on our website, but I figured it'd be easier to keep it in the chat. So all those resources I just talked about are hyperlinked within this, and they include a description as well if you want to share it with other folks throughout your building.